Welcome back, everyone. In this video I'm going to be making the silicon bronze bolts that are going to hold together the backbone of my 9-foot dinghy. Now, initially when I was recording the videos of the bolt making process, I thought that they would just be part of an episode in the series, but actually by the time I'd finished editing them all together I realized that it was actually quite long, so I've decided just to do one episode all about how to make the bolts. Now, one thing that you might notice as well is that I filmed this a little while ago, and it was sort of in between the disaster with my first tent being destroyed in the storm and getting in the new tent, which you can see behind me. So you'll notice in these videos I have no tent at all, which did make it a little bit challenging because I was somewhat subject to the weather conditions for being able to do filming or indeed any work at all. Without further ado, let's get on to making some silicon bronze bolts. So I bought myself some lengths of silicon bronze rod, and I've cut them to the lengths that I want, and now I need to cut some threads onto the ends to make bolts out of them. Now, in order to do that, I have bought myself a die rod and a die to go into it. Now, when you're buying a die, the most important thing is to make sure that you get the correct kind that matches with the nuts that you're going to get. So this one that I have is a UNC, so that's coarse. But there is also a UNF, and I nearly bought a UNF, but fortunately I double checked into the nuts that I was buying, and I realized that the silicon bronze nuts that I was buying were UNC. It wasn't apparently obvious from looking at the description. I had to go into the specifications, look at some of the measurements, and go and do some research online because, to be honest, woodworking is my thing and not necessarily metalwork. So this is my first time of actually making bolts. So I had to do a little bit of research, and I found out that I actually needed to buy the UNC die because otherwise I would have been rather disappointed. I would have cut all the threads and then found that the silicon bronze nuts that I had bought wouldn't actually fit onto them. So that's the number one most important thing to make sure that you get right. I can't really tell you too much about the difference between UNF and UNC and what the benefits are of one compared to the other. But what I can tell you is make sure that they match between the die and the nuts. So actually using a die and a die rod is pretty simple. You can see on the die that on this side there's 3 indentations, on this side there's 1, so obviously that just matches up with little screws that they've got here. Just a bit of a make sure that you've got these opened up enough to just pop it in. Can be a little bit of a tricky one. There we go. Tighten these up and you're ready to go. Now I've got one of my lengths of silicon bronze. This is going to be a bolt, and I'm going to put it in the vise, but when I do that I'm just going to wrap it up in this glove, and one, that's going to actually keep it more secure in the vise, and also it will protect it a bit from the metal. So when cutting the threads, you obviously want to move in a clockwise direction. You want to make sure that you're sitting very straight. And just for the start, you can just grind off a little bit around the edges, but silicon bronze is so soft I'm just actually doing it with this. Just want to take off the edges a bit. So I'm just sort of wiggling that around just to make it a little bit easier on myself. And I think that's probably good enough. So now I'm just going to make sure this is sitting on straight. And we're going to start going around. Now we're underway. Now, since, as I say, I'd never done this before, I did have to look up some videos on it myself. And I have been informed that it's a good idea every half turn to take it back, and that's just to clear away the little shavings. To be honest, with something like silicon bronze, because it's so soft, you can actually get away with doing a little bit more. But I think, generally speaking, it is a pretty good rule of thumb every half turn to bring it back and clear it. I have obviously done one of these before. This is not my first one. I decided not to video that one, although I could have, because it went very well indeed. But I have been able to do a turn and a half. As a matter of fact, you can see I've just done quite a bit there. And we're carrying along very nicely. When I do the other side, I'll film this from the top so you can get more of an idea of what's going on. But that is enough. So we're just going to take this off. And look at that. And now I've just got one of the silicon bronze nuts. Look at that. Beautiful. It's really a very satisfying process, I have to say. So you can see as it goes around the little curls of silicon bronze, and I'll just bring it back, and those will just pop right off. So that's doing it about half a turn. Pretty easy. But as I say, I can do much more than that. Apologies, I keep bumping the camera there. So I need 7 bolts in total. Look at that. Lovely. And this is actually the third one that I've done. Here are the other 2. So you can see they are of varying lengths, of course, because that was the whole reason why I made them myself instead of buying them already manufactured, because I needed specific and different lengths. So you can see this is the longest one that I need, and this is the second longest, and these are going to be the ones that go through the stern knee. I'll tell you what, this one's gone very well. I've just started that straight away. Starting to get good at this. So as you can see with the one that I just did, it really doesn't take much time at all once you get the hang of it. So I'm just going to carry on with the rest of them, and that won't take me more than about 10 minutes. Oh, one more thing. Every so often, check the little screws here, because they do eventually start to come loose. And once they become loose enough, this will fall out. So that's all there is for this video. In the next episode, I am going to be using those silicon bronze bolts to put together the backbone, which is going to be a very exciting video because the shape of the boat is finally going to start to come into being. So I do hope you will join me for that video as well. Please do hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.